The St Kilda Football Club has had a long history in Australian rules football. They have been around since the very beginning, being established in 1873. However, despite being a part of the Australian Football League for over 150 years, they have only claimed one premiership. And the St Kilda Football Club have widely been known in Australia as an irrelevant club for the majority of their 150-year history. And so many outsiders would see the Saints as the worst club in AFL history. Now, the St Kilda Football Club have been memed upon for some time now, and many of you may have heard the joke that the Saints are the best known for stealing defeat from the jaws of victory. And this was most notably known in the 2010 Grand Final draw. But before we get to that fateful day in 2010, if a club like the Saints has been around since the beginning of the Australian Football League, then we must start at the beginning. But guys, before we get into this video, BR Designs, our very own design company, is your one-stop shop for all your AFL prints. We have designs for every single team, so make sure to head down to the description below, head over to BR Designs, and make sure to find your desired AFL design. And make sure to use our unique features with our design of scanning your QR code will actually bring up on your phone the highlight that you have the design for. And also, before you check out, make sure to use code SAINTS for 10% off your purchase for the next 48 hours. So getting quick, guys, let's get back into the video. So back in 1873, the St Kilda Football Club was established and were one of the 8 foundation clubs introduced to the VFL in 1897. Now, in the early years of the St Kilda Football Club's history, it was kind of indicative of the way they are portrayed today, as they were not the best, not doing well in its first few years, and having the record of the lowest recorded score in VFL AFL match history of just 1 point scored way back in 1899 versus Geelong. In fact, the Saints recorded 48 straight losses before they finally broke their duck on May the 5th in 1900 against Melbourne. Now, funnily enough, this match initially ended in a draw, but a protest was launched by the Saints, and this protest actually worked, which then changed the result to give St Kilda a 1 point victory and forever changed the record books that the Saints would have their first win on that day. Now, in 1907, the Saints made their first ever final series, qualifying third with 9 wins and 8 losses. And the following year, the club once again qualified in third position and were eliminated by Carlton in the semi-finals. So they were showing improvement, but not making it to a grand final until 1913, when they went up against Fitzroy. But unfortunately, the Saints would go down 56-43. And despite a 10-year period of them making final series, when we got to the years between 1919 and 1938, the Saints only qualified for 1 final series. And to be honest, there was not much success at the St Kilda Football Club until Alan Jeans was appointed the coach of the Saints in 1961. Now, in Jeans' first year of coaching, he qualified for the Final Four for the first time since 1939. The club lost to Footscray in their first semi-final, and the club again qualified for the finals in 1963, but was eliminated again in the semi-finals. But for the first time in their history, the Saints won the minor premiership in 1965 and were able to beat Collingwood in their semi-final to advance to the grand final for the first time since 1913, where they went up against Essendon. But unfortunately, history was not on the Saints' side, as they went down by 35 points in front of a crowd at the MCG, amassing over 100,000 people. But despite the loss, the Saints were not going down without a fight, and were ready once again to go one better in 1966 as they made the grand final against Collingwood. Now, this game was tight from start to finish, with the scores at every change not being over 4 points either way. And with only a few minutes to go, the scores were level. But with only a minute to go on the clock, inside the Saints forward 50, the ball found its way to St Kilda's Barry Breen, who snapped at goal and kicked it behind to put his side in front. And the Saints were able to hold on in the final moments to claim their first ever premiership. The Saints finally had a premiership to their name, 93 years after being established and 68 years after being a part of the VFL. They had finally added a premiership cup to their trophy cabinet. Now, of course, a premiership is no easy feat to accomplish. I mean, that's an obvious fact. But 1 flag in 68 years, and at this current point, 58 years since they claimed that premiership triumph. The question has to be put out there if they are the worst club in AFL history. Now, of course, people may say Fremantle because they've never won a premiership since they entered the AFL, and even Collingwood because they've lost 27 grand finals. But with the Saints only making 8 grand finals in its history, losing 6, drawing 1 and winning 1 in 127 years, and not to mention the fact that the Saints have recorded 27 wooden spoons, it's pretty obvious as to why the Saints can be seen as the worst team in the AFL. But with the mention of the infamous drawn grand final, it would be remiss of me to not talk about the grand final that almost broke the drought for the Saints. Now, between the premiership in 1966 and the 2010 drawn grand final, the Saints only appeared in 3 other grand finals, in 1971, 1977 and 2009, which of course were all defeats. But when it comes to the 2010 grand final, it's seen as the flag that got away from the Saints. Now let's talk about the game itself. The Saints went into this game as underdogs, having finished 3rd in the home and away season, and going up against the minor premiers in Collingwood, who seemed almost unbeatable. And at half-time of this game, it looked like the Saints were going to lose yet another grand final, with the Pies taking a 4-goal lead into the main break. But in the 3rd quarter, the Saints sprang into life, with an early goal to Riewoldt, followed up by Goddard and Gilbert closing the gap to within 7 points at the 22-minute mark of the 3rd term. It was set for a grandstand finish in the final quarter. Now, the Pies scored the first goal of the final quarter with a great stoppage finish from Leon Davis, which sent the Pies to a 14-point lead. But then goals to club legends in Lenny Hayes and Stephen Milne brought the Saints back to within 2 points. And a few moments later, the Saints would take the lead for the first time in the game, courtesy of Brendan Goddard, with what could be the best mark in grand final history. Now, the lead for the Saints was short-lived as the Pies later scored a goal through Travis Cloke from point-blank range, which saw them take a 1-point lead. But then came the moment that all Saints fans want to erase from their memory. The moment that Saints fans would have asked the AFL to change the shape of the oval ball to stop it from bouncing at an awkward angle.
Johnson quickly off the mark. Milne with a burst. Ball bouncing. Scores a level.
Now, the call from Bruce McAvaney is iconic, saying,
"What are you doing next week?"
But the final moments of this game were insane. And after the siren blew on the MCC wing at the MCG, the crowd's audible cheers and begging for their side to get one more chance at goal changed to a stunned silence. No one knew what to do. You could even see on the ground the players not knowing how to react, and even seeing Nick Del Santo being pulled up from one of the umpires. It was just a stunning moment in AFL history. Everyone was stunned. Not only did they have to put so much energy and effort into the grand final the last day in September, but now they'd have to do this all over again next week. Now, I'm going to be completely honest here. I don't know why the AFL ever had a rule that if a grand final ended in a draw, that they would have to play the game all over again the next week after. And I honestly think that if that game went on for a few more minutes, the Saints would have won it. But in a situation full of questions, there was only one certainty, that the 2010 grand final winner would be decided the week after. And of course, we all know that the Saints were demolished, with Collingwood walking out winners by 56 points. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the 2010 grand final replay, but it almost felt like the Saints fired their shot in the first game and had nothing left to give when it came to the replayed grand final, which is completely understandable in my opinion. But I want to just go back a little bit to the bounce, and I find it pretty interesting to compare that to their history. Remembering at the start of the video when I talked about the joke that the Saints are most known for being able to steal defeat from the jaws of victory. And even though the bounce of the ball moment isn't a signifier of a loss, it's almost like a metaphor for the Saints' history, always being out of grasp of any type of success. And in the unfortunate case for the St Kilda Football Club, when you look down into the history books, the main point that sticks out in every person's mind is that this club has had a history of failure. Hey guys, I really hope you did enjoy this video, and I really hope this didn't come off as some type of St Kilda hate video by any means. I actually really do like the Saints, and I have a lot of people in my life who are massive St Kilda fans, and I really do hope that we actually see some much deserved success for St Kilda in the future. I would love to see them break their premiership drought, as I'm a Sydney Swans fan, and I would know that waiting 72 years for a premiership was absolutely horrible for a lot of Sydney Swans fans. So I could just imagine how many St Kilda fans would be just praying for a premiership in the coming years. But guys, before you do go, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to head over to BR Designs, our very own footy print company, for all your AFL prints. And remember to use the code SAINTS at checkout for 10% off your purchase. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all in the next one.